They said time heals everything, but for Ethan Black, it only buried the pain deeper. 5 years ago, he lost the woman he loved and the child he never got to hold. Love died that night in the hospital, or so he believed, until fate pulled him back to the very same place where it had all ended. He didn't expect to see her alive. He didn't expect to see her name on the door. But what shattered him completely was seeing a notebook beside her bed, filled with one name written over and over again: Liam Ethan Black. His name, the name of a child who was supposed to never exist. And in that moment, the heart he had buried under pride and success began to break all over again. Ethan Black. The man every business magazine called unstoppable. The ruthless millionaire CEO who believed feelings were for the weak. No one knew that his coldness came from a single night, the night he lost Clara Evans, the only woman who ever saw his heart. 5 years ago, a phone call from the hospital shattered his world. She didn't make it, the doctor had said, and Ethan, in his shock and rage, had signed the discharge papers and vanished. He built an empire on top of the ruins of his love, pretending she never existed, but fate has a cruel sense of humor. One evening, while touring the new hospital wing his company funded, Ethan's gaze fell upon a door, room 317. The name on the chart made his pulse stop. Clara Evans. He stepped in. For a moment, the world went silent. She lay there, weak and pale, oxygen tube against her skin, her fingers twitching faintly on the white sheet. Ethan's heart thundered in disbelief. She was alive. He moved closer, afraid she'd disappear if he blinked. And that's when he saw it, a small notebook beside her pillow. Its cover was torn, but inside, his entire world waited. Dozens of pages, all written in her familiar handwriting. Each page began with the same words: for Liam Ethan Black. He turned the pages with trembling fingers, sketches, lullabies, and letters written to a boy he never met. Your father has your eyes. He doesn't know you exist, but I hope one day he will. Tears blurred his vision. His hands shook. He remembered her soft laughter, her whispered dream, he'll be our little miracle. And beneath the last page was an ultrasound photo dated just a week before she disappeared. Ethan stumbled back, his world spinning. He had believed she lost the baby. He had believed she was gone. But she had lived and carried his child. A soft voice startled him. She talks about him even in her sleep, the nurse said. She never gave up hope. Ethan's throat closed. Where is he? The nurse smiled sadly. He's here, waiting outside. And before Ethan could speak, a small boy peeked from the doorway with dark hair, hazel eyes, and a stare that stole the air from Ethan's lungs. He looked exactly like him. Ethan froze. The little boy's eyes met his, filled with curiosity and confusion. Are you the man from Mommy's stories? The boy asked softly. Ethan knelt, unable to breathe. What's your name, buddy? Liam, he said proudly. Liam Ethan Black. The world stopped. Ethan's throat tightened. He couldn't speak. He just stared at the living, breathing proof of a love he'd buried. Where's your mom? Ethan asked, his voice shaking. The boy pointed toward the bed. She's sleeping. The doctor said she's tired from being strong. Ethan's chest ached. He wanted to hold her, to say sorry, but guilt weighed heavier than air. He had money, power, everything, but the one thing he lost now stared back at him, calling him Dad. That night, Ethan didn't leave. He sat beside Clara's bed until dawn, holding Liam's hand as the boy slept on his lap. When Clara finally opened her eyes, weak and tearful, she whispered his name. Ethan. He stood quickly, tears escaping his control. Clara, I thought I lost you. You did, she whispered painfully, because you didn't stay. Her words cut deeper than any wound. I was scared, he confessed. I believed you. We're gone. And when they said the baby, I wanted to tell you, she said, her voice trembling. But you left before I could. I didn't die, Ethan. I just learned to live without you. He dropped to his knees beside her, and I've been living without my soul ever since. Silence filled the room, heavy with everything left unsaid. Then a tiny hand touched Clara's cheek. Liam had woken, his eyes wide. Mommy, Daddy's crying. Ethan smiled through tears. Yeah, buddy, because Daddy was stupid. Clara's eyes softened, tears glistening. You found him? Ethan nodded. And I'm never letting either of you go again. The sound of the hospital monitor had become the rhythm of Ethan's days. Every morning, he brought fresh flowers to her room, lilies, the ones she loved, and every evening, he sat with Liam, telling stories of a mother who once painted sunsets just to make the world brighter. Ethan's empire kept calling board meetings, investors, contracts, but none of it mattered anymore. For the first time in years, he didn't care about profit margins or power. All he cared about was them. Clara's recovery was slow, but each day brought a tiny miracle. The first time she laughed again, Ethan couldn't look away. The sound felt like home after years of silence. One afternoon, as Liam played with his toy cars near the hospital window, Clara looked at Ethan. Really looked at him. "You've changed," she said softly. He met her gaze. "Losing you did that." She sighed. "You didn't lose me, Ethan. You just stopped fighting." Her words were calm, but they cut through him. He clenched his jaw, trying to find the right words. "I thought I was protecting myself. The doctors said you were gone. I couldn't face the truth. I built walls, Clara, and I buried the part of me that loved you." Tears filled her eyes. "And what about the part that loved him?" She nodded toward Liam, who was now humming a tune under his breath. Ethan's throat tightened. He turned toward his son. "I didn't even know he existed, but now that I do." He paused, his voice trembling. "I'll spend the rest of my life making sure he never doubts that he's loved." Clara stared at him. The man who once shattered her world, now standing before her, broken in all the right ways. For the first time, she didn't see the cold, untouchable CEO. She saw Ethan, the man who used to hold her hand in the rain. The one who whispered dreams against her skin. "Do you still love me?" she asked quietly, her heart pounding. He took her hand gently, his eyes glistening. "I never stopped, Clara. I just forgot how to show it." Silence filled the room, not heavy, but tender. Then Liam's laughter broke it. He ran toward them, clutching a crayon drawing. "Look, Mommy, Daddy, and you and me." The paper was messy, colorful, full of uneven lines, but it captured everything. The three of them, holding hands under a sun with a big smile. Clara smiled through tears. "It's beautiful, sweetheart." Ethan crouched beside Liam, his voice barely a whisper. "Can I keep this?" Liam nodded proudly. "Only if you promise not to leave again." Ethan froze, his heart clenched. Slowly, he pulled Liam into his arms. "I promise," he whispered. "Never again." From that day, Ethan didn't just visit, he lived there. He learned how to braid Clara's hair when she was too weak. He read bedtime stories to Liam. He brought coffee for the nurses, thanking them as if they were angels. And when Clara finally took her first steps outside the hospital, the staff clapped quietly, smiling at the family walking together. Ethan walked beside her, one hand holding Liam's, the other supporting her. It wasn't a grand comeback, it was quiet, real, and full of love reborn. Outside, the sky burned gold as the sun began to set. Clara stopped and looked at him. "You don't have to stay out of guilt, Ethan." He turned to her, eyes steady. "I'm not here because I have to. I'm here because I want to." Liam tugged his sleeve. "Daddy, can we go home now?" Ethan knelt beside him, smiling softly. "We are home, buddy. Wherever you and Mommy are, that's home for me." Clara's tears finally fell, silent and uncontrollable. She whispered, "You always said love was a weakness." He smiled faintly. "I was wrong. Love is the only thing that kept me alive long enough to find you again." She reached for his hand, their fingers interlocking, fragile, but unbreakable. Weeks later, Clara was discharged. The world outside the hospital felt new, like waking from a long nightmare. Ethan drove them home, not to the mansion filled with marble and silence, but to the small beach house they once dreamed of buying. Inside, everything was simple: wooden floors, white curtains, the sound of waves in the distance. Liam ran to the balcony, laughing. "Mommy, look, the ocean." Clara leaned against the doorframe, exhaustion mixing with happiness. "He's just like you," she said softly. Ethan smiled. "No, he's better. He has your heart." They watched their son chase seagulls until the sun dipped below the horizon, and then Ethan turned to her. "I don't want to waste another second, Clara. I lost 5 years to fear and pride. I won't lose another moment to silence." She blinked, confused, until he knelt before her, not with a diamond, but with the small notebook she had written for their son. "I found this beside your bed. It saved me. You saved me." Tears streamed down her face as he opened it to the last page. He had written something new at the bottom. "For Clara and Liam, my second chance at life." Clara covered her mouth, overwhelmed. Ethan rose, cupping her face gently. "Let me make it right this time. Not with promises, with presence." She smiled through tears, whispering, "Then stay." He pulled her close, forehead to forehead. "Forever?" Liam's giggle echoed behind them. "Ooh, Daddy's kissing Mommy." They both laughed, the kind of laughter that heals old scars. As the stars appeared, Clara whispered, "You came back." Ethan smiled softly, holding her tighter. "No, Clara. I finally came home. And somewhere, deep inside, the part of her heart that had stopped believing, began to beat again. And that's how love found its way back. Not in luxury, not in perfection, but in forgiveness. He thought freedom meant walking away, but he learned it meant coming home. Sometimes, life doesn't give us second chances, unless we're brave enough to fight for them. Ethan and Clara's story isn't just about loss, it's about what happens when love refuses to die. If this story touched your heart, tell me in the comments. Should Ethan and Clara marry again? Or should Clara choose a new life, away from the pain of the past? Your answer decides their future. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the for the next part, because the next story might be your story.